I'm Modia Silva, and welcome to this podcast series, Conscious Curiosity. It's a series about consciousness and about curiosity. And we're not sure where else it's going to go. But what we do know is that we have a whole bevy of great guests who are going to come on and dance around these questions of what is consciousness, how is it to be curious in the world, in life, and where's the intersection point between those two? We're going to interview a lot of therapists, neuroscientists, religious leaders, and just about anyone else who has something that we think is going to be interesting for you to hear about consciousness and about curiosity. So thank you so much for joining. Our first guest, and this is exciting for me because it's the beginning of this series, our first guest is Terra Kowalyk, who is a psychotherapist from Toronto, Canada. And she's going to talk, or we're going to talk together, as you'll hear in a moment, about things like attunement and empathy and codependency and all sorts of other great things. So sit back and enjoy. And if there's something that you'd like to hear that you aren't hearing in these podcasts, then please get in touch with me, propose something, and I will do my best to satisfy. Until then, please just sit back and enjoy this episode. So Terra, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Modia.
It's exciting to have you here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. I want to dive in because this show is really about consciousness and curiosity, but I actually want to dive in to hear more about you first, so that our audience also gets to know a little bit about you, where you've come from, who you are.
Sure.
So I know some about you, and I wonder if we could go back to, not to the very beginning, but I know you had a career before being a psychotherapist.
Yes.
You want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I was an actor for 21 years of my life, and did it professionally for 16. So I started professionally when I was 12. I got picked up playing Alice in Wonderland in Markham at the Markham Youth Theatre, and an agent came and asked if I had an agent. So my mom said no, so I started acting professionally then. And then continued right to grad school. When I got into McGill for my master's in Montreal, I thought I would keep acting because my agent could send me out in Montreal. He was in Toronto, but then studies took over and I could barely shower and eat. So I think I went away and just...
And there was no director that wanted a smelly Terra.
No, thank goodness.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I like that hygiene sometimes trumps everything else.
Oh gosh, yes. Well, yeah, the amount of work that I remember at McGill was, yeah, there would literally be days where I would forget to eat because it was just so much work.
Yeah. So that's a long time. That's like a full career. 16 years of acting.
Yes. And through pretty much almost the whole time, I thought that was going to be it. Like I was one of those, I'm going to be a famous movie star and that's it. Even after high school, I didn't go to university. I went just head straight into acting. I went to LA for 2 years straight for pilot season. It's when they do all the main casting for the big TV shows for the fall. So I went to LA twice to live there for pilot season and got an agent down there. Yeah, I was like full on into the acting.
How is the LA scene? I mean, I'm up here in Canada and I just hear about it.
Yeah. You know that saying, what is it, a small fish in a big pond?
Right, yeah.
So I came from Toronto being like one of the first picks to come out to auditions in Toronto. So I was like, yeah, I'm like hot stuff. Like I get the agents know me, I get first picks. I go down to LA and I go into a room of like 100 other women that look like me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm nobody. So it was first of all, it was very humbling. And second of all, like it was very trying on the ego, like looks wise, especially like for women down there. It's, they call for, a beautiful girl, and you think, okay, yeah, like I can do this, and then you go in and you're like, oh my gosh, like I look like an ugly duckling compared to all these women. Like
Wow.
it was very, it really in truth played with my self-esteem quite a bit. Like it was, yeah, quite an interesting experience. So
Hmm.
I'm grateful I had it, and I can understand. I have a lot of compassion for why young um, movie stars do things to their bodies, like breast implants and eating disorders. Like I can understand the psychological um, like resilience or strength or you need. It's quite hard. Yeah.
Yeah. And I imagine for you, that resilience and strength is also needed to get out of LA.
Yes. Yes. I was so grateful I had a lot of awareness in it.
Hmm.
Like I noticed myself starting to doubt things about myself that I hadn't before. So I'm very grateful for that I had that, like, oh, I never had that thought before. Or like, why am I starting to think like that? Or like, I've never had this kind of relationship with my body. What's happening now? So
Hmm.
I'm very grateful I had that awareness. I think it really protected me. Um, but I don't know if everyone has that.
Right. Yeah. I think I hear there are very few actors and actresses who get out and like go buy a farm in the middle of Wyoming or, like manage to get away from LA.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So what, like having left it
Mhm.
and that many years, what are your takeaways from it? Like how has it influenced or informed your life, like the next stage of your life?
Well, that's actually an interesting question because believe it or not, it kind of even ties into why I left academics too. It's actually quite similar. Well, actually, maybe this isn't your question, but the reason I got out of acting and even why I left the PhD was because I was aware of what it was feeding in me that now plays a huge part in my practice with clients. Because now one of my most um, passionate goals, aims, compasses
Uh,
in my practice with clients is supporting them to live the most authentic life for them.
hmm.
And so in acting, it was a slow realization of like, why am I even here? Why am I in this industry? Why am I doing this? And it was a slow realization of, oh wow, this just all feeds my ego and feeds
Uh-huh.
into this like deep insecurity that I'm not enough unless I get a role. I'm not enough unless the director or producer like me. And then I get the job. It's, you hear actors talk about it all the time. You're only as good as your last role. So in between roles, like there's such insecurity, and it just feeds on that.
Hmm.
And similar in the PhD. So that's why, like when I was really being deeply self-reflective, I was like, I don't want to feed these parts of me. I want to feed the part of me that knows I'm enough without it, which means I
Right.
have to leave.
Wow. That's nice. It makes me think if I can share about my first career was engineering, not acting in LA.
Yeah, a little different, a little
Yeah,
different.
just a little different.
Yeah.
Although I was the stage magician at my high school. Uh,
Oh, I can so see that, Modia. I can so see that. That doesn't
but
surprise
but
me.
but engineering was the same for me. It's like I was in a co-op program, so every 8 months I was out working in a different place, and every time I had a different job, it was like, oh my gosh, this isn't me. But I just kept doing it until I figured out why it wasn't me. And it
Yes.
was like, oh, I'm just doing this because I think I need stability and security and like the conservative comfort of engine that that most engineers have. Not to
Mhm.
not to denigrate them. It's just
Mm.
it wasn't for me. And
Yeah.
it helped me say, oh, but I'm ignoring this other side of me that wants to get out there and do something different. And
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Totally. And I love how you said it wasn't for me, right? Because it
mm,
doesn't mean it's not for other people. I
right,
just, like in my experience, I recognize like, oh, acting is feeding this part of me. Maybe not for everybody, but for me,
yeah,
this, so it's not aligning.
right, right. Cool. So you went left LA, you were in the middle of a PhD at McGill, right?
Yes.
In Montreal.
Yes.
And then you turned onto a different road again.
Yes. I know. It was a very similar feeling in me. But now looking back, I really see it was like life giving me these experiences to further learn, like to wake up. Hence actually why my practice is called conscious living therapy, to live consciously, to live awake, to live like, why am I doing the things I'm doing? Um,
Mm.
so yeah, it was like acting was like the first big experience, and not test, but opportunity to kind of wake up. And then going through academia, like my master's and then going to the PhD, I remember so many moments, especially in the PhD. It did build. Like I remember first year, second year of the master's, and then the first and only year. I only did the 1 year of the PhD. I remember this feeling, this pressure, inner pressure building of um, like inside, and this voice that would be saying to me, like, "Where are you in your life?
Mm.
This is not your life. Whose life are you living?"
Uh-huh.
And I remember being in the shower having this voice. I'm like, is this what it's like to hear voices? Like, it was very but I'm grateful. Like I'm grateful. It really did deeply wake me up to what kind of life do I want to live, and if I do want to go on this path, because the PhD was still in counseling psychology, so I was on the path to becoming a psychologist. But
Mm.
I'll never forget. I just come back from Europe, from Italy and Spain for a month, and I was sitting on a patio at Second Cup. It was like 6 in the morning, and I was drinking my coffee. And I just remember having this like really quiet mind and this like clarity inside, and asking myself, why are you in the PhD?
Mm.
And with crystal clear, um, like, with crystal clarity, this voice came through: because you feel you're not enough without it. In
Wow.
that moment, I was like, if I want to go on a journey to help and support others to find their most authentic self, I would be the biggest hypocrite to keep walking this path.
Mm.
The only way for me to do this with a whole heart and whole being is to leave this prestigious path and do it in a way that's more authentic for me, where
Wow.
I know, like, where I face my own beliefs of I'm not enough without the PhD or the acting, that I am enough.
Right.
So, and I left. It was literally within, because that was, I think, August 6th. I'll never forget that. It was August 6th, 2015. Then I had to come to Toronto for I didn't know, well, I guess I kind of knew it at the time, my last academic conference presentation. It was August 9th at APA, and it was in Toronto. And then 2 days later, the 11th, there was the info night at Gestalt.
Uh-huh.
And
At the Gestalt Institute of Toronto.
yes, at the Gestalt Institute of Toronto. And so
Yeah.
at that 11th, that's when I did the info session, and
Uh-huh.
cried the whole time because I was like, oh my gosh, these are my people. This is where I belong. Yeah,
That's so
within,
nice.
I told my supervisor I was leaving, and called my 2 internships that I got into starting September, told them I was leaving, sold everything in my apartment except my clothes and my books, and moved to a basement apartment in Toronto and started fresh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was,
That's amazing. I mean, the courage also just to upheave,
yeah.
to to upheave and say, this isn't my path,
Yes, it
is,
was.
takes a lot of courage.
Thank you for saying that. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember the conversation with my supervisor. She said to me, she's like, Tara, if I didn't feel like you could do this, I would tell you. And you're
Mm.
not one of these students that I don't feel you can do. You can do this.
Mm.
And I think in a way that was almost life also testing me, being like, Tara, if you really want this, you got this. Like I got my own funding. I got into the top 2 internships. Like I was publishing. I
Mm.
was, from an academic standpoint, very successful. So it's not like I wasn't getting the messages from the program that I couldn't do it. It was more of a, like, this just doesn't feel right.
Uh-huh.
So it was really a big leap of like jumping into myself and trusting myself,
Right.
and letting go of all the external things that I was holding on to try and feel enough.
Huh. What was your PhD thesis? Or had you chosen one by then?
Yes, yes. It's what I got funding in. It was about attunement.
Attunement,
Attunement, yes.
like playing a piano or something, or
No, no. So attunement is basically the process of attuning to somebody else's emotional state. It's not necessarily matching or mirroring. It's feeling into somebody else's state within your own body.
hmm.
I don't know if that's clear enough, but it's, yeah.
I don't know. It's clear for me. So
Mhm.
I also practice somatic experiencing, right?
Okay.
And one,
Great.
which is a trauma therapy created by Peter Levine.
Yeah.
And one of the first stages of that is attunement, is
Right.
exactly what you said. But I wonder for our audience,
Mhm.
could you say a little bit more about it?
Yeah. I was really fascinated with this concept of attunement. How you could watch two people talking from even a distance, and you could see there was like a dance between them. I was really fascinated with that, and I started looking into this actually in my fourth year of my undergrad, and learned about this concept of attunement by Daniel Stern. So Daniel Stern was an American psychiatrist who studied infant
Mhm.
development and noticed this process of mothers, well, caregivers attuning to their babies, where a baby is reaching, like let's say a baby's in a high chair and they're reaching for something, and as her body's reaching, the mother is attuning by going, oh, oh, oh. So the mother is vocally matching, attuning to what the child's experience is. So it doesn't, again, have to be physical. It can be across modalities of voice,
Mhm.
tone, body expression.
So it's like entering into a dance, but still maintaining a level of separateness, not exactly doing the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like mirroring.
Right.
Um, yeah, yeah. It's interesting because actually, when Daniel Stern would ask these mothers why they were doing that, they had no conscious awareness of doing it.
Mm.
It was completely unconscious. And when they were asked, well, why do you think you do it? A lot of the answers were, I want to join in my baby's world and their experience.
Ah,
So it's like a joining into the other person's
right.
experience. So that concept really interested me in the psychotherapeutic process of the therapist entering into the client's world to try and support them in there wherever they are. But then it's like, so let's say a client comes in very nervous. It's like the therapist has to be very grounded in themselves to be able to kind of attune and kind of enter into that anxious world with the client, but have an element of stability in them. So then when they're attuned, it can actually support the client to kind of come back down into their own stability.
Uh-huh. I want to ask you though about where co-creation comes into this as well. Like as you talk about attunement and moving into the client's anxiety in this case, let's say,
Mhm, mhm.
do you feel the client also comes out and meets you at the same place, or not at the same place, but meets you at a place? And so it's not necessarily you moving into their space, but it's you
Yeah.
moving in, them moving in, and there's a new space created.
Yes. Yes. My experience when I think about with clients, it's like I'm feeling with how receptive they are to being with me.
Uh-huh.
Um, right. So it's, where can I feel the blocks? Where can I feel the receptivity? Where can I feel the openness versus the constriction? And I'm feeling it all in my body.
Right.
So in truth, I've actually never thought about it as a co-creation, even though 5 years of Gestalt, I should be thinking about that. But it's yeah, it's been more of like an experience of like feeling into the client and feeling where the blocks are, and then and respecting that, right? And just, but noticing, feeling in my body, where do I get closed with the client, where, and that kind of gives me an idea of what's happening for them, and gives me a bit of a compass on kind of helping them guide their breath or their awareness in their body.
Right. So not necessarily to put you on the spot. I don't mean to put you on the spot,
No, this is
but
great.
as an example, like can you think of an example, like to make it a bit more concrete?
Mhm. This one keeps popping into my head, so I'm just gonna. So I was dealing with a client who was very, I could feel very emotionally shut off. So when they were talking, and I could just feel them like up here,
Hmm.
but I couldn't feel their body. Like I couldn't feel my body. Like,
Aha.
what is happening here? Like I was feeling disoriented, and I'm like, I can hear the words, and they're saying content that's very important, but I can't feel it in my body, which was giving me an indication that they were probably very disconnected from their body.
Aha.
So in even just, I'll pause right there at that, it was like me attuning into that client's inner state and
Right.
noticing there's a complete bifurcation of their
Uh-huh.
head from their body. So that guidance within myself of like, oh, I'm disconnected, this is giving me a bit of input into what's happening for the client. So I invited them to pause and to start gently paying attention what they were noticing if they dropped their awareness into their body. That they still couldn't feel anything, they couldn't notice anything, which confirmed my guess that there was a complete disconnection. And then what I did was I invited them to feel the couch, because I wanted them to feel something below them, to feel support. So
Hmm.
then when I guided their attention to the couch and to actually notice any tension or constriction lifting above the couch, like holding the body above the couch and then releasing it, emotion started immediately to come,
Oh,
and they just started crying. And it's like in that moment I exhaled and I felt my whole body.
wow.
Yeah. So, and then we of course talked for the second half of the whole session about that's how they survive, right? Because
Mm,
there's so much emotion and pain that they have to disconnect.
right.
So then it was about radically honoring and respecting how they function, and maybe like trying a little drops almost of awareness to let a little bit of emotion.
Right. Right. So the word that comes to me as I hear that power, like it's a powerful story, it's a powerful example, is trust. Because it's
Oh,
not just them gaining the trust or having enough trust within the space that you've created, but it's like you have to really trust your body.
yes. Oh my gosh, yes. It just got goosebumps. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I always I'm also very open to being wrong.
Hmm.
It's like that's why I'm very aware of like, can we check something? Where, I'm just noticing I'm noticing something in me. Can we check something? Or, so I never want to assume like I know what the client's going through, and that's but I do I absolutely um, have to be very, very aware of my own body and my own sensations and my own feelings in my body, which gives me so much information with the client in front.
Right. It kind of leads, like what you're saying to me, sort of fits into the bubble of empathy
Hmm. Hmm.
some way, which is kind of like the big buzzword today, right? Like empathy, compassion. No, forget compassion's old. Like empathy is the new thing.
Oh, I love compassion actually. Yeah, no, yes,
Oh
yes.
yeah.
Empathy is yeah, important for sure.
I don't know if you want to talk about it, but mirror neurons
Oh
and,
yes, yes.
and the role that they play, or when they were invented in the 90s,
Yes, okay. Yes, mirror
like
neurons.
the role they play in empathy.
Yes, well they're kind of known as the empathy neurons. So
Hmm.
um yeah, mirror neurons are these neurons in the brain that are activated in the observer when the observer, like myself, am watching you do an action that has intentionality. So, in other words, if you go to reach for a mug,
Right.
and I know you got intention in your movement, my mirror neurons are going to go off,
Uh-huh.
and it's telling me it's like in a way it's like me entering your experience, me having the same like neural activation that's going on in your body when you're reaching for the mug.
Hmm.
So it started actually very very they found them they discovered them by mistake. So it was in 1992 by these I believe they were neuropsychologists, neuroscientists. They were doing work on mac monkeys,
Hmm.
and they were all they had those
Wired up. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and their brains. And I can't actually remember what they were studying, what the original studying, what they were doing. But um, so between one of the takes that they were doing in this research, um, the one of the scientists went to reach for a banana,
Hmm.
and the mirror neurons went off, and the monkeys and the scientists looked at each other, going, "What just happened?" Like, so it was that moment that they realized when the monkeys were watching the humans do something that they could understand within themselves, their mirror neurons went off.
Mm.
So 5 years later is when the term mirror neurons was actually born.
Oh,
Um,
5 years after.
After that, yeah, but
Wow.
1992 is when they originally found this area, F5 in the mac monkey brain.
So why is it like I'm rewatching the TV show This Is Us? I don't
Oh
know if
yes,
you know
I
it.
love that show.
So why is it that I can watch two series
Yeah.
and I cry at every episode of This Is Us, and I don't cry at any episode of another show?
Oh gosh.
Like, is that a mirror neuron thing?
I that's a good question. First of all, I think the show's incredibly well written and written by people that know human psychology and emotions.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, so there's theories that say that somebody who has a highly developed mirror neuron system is more likely to be empathic and more likely to be able to feel other people's experiences and feel into other people's
Hmm.
experiences. And how the theory that is there's a theory saying that how mirror neuron systems become like are developed and become stronger is by attunement when they are infants. This was all part of my research in when
Right.
I my PhD, was looking at um, how basically the mirror neuron system is developed in an infant, and it's through that attuning from a caregiver. And as an infant, this is kind of a theory, if you received a lot of attunement, then you had a more highly activated mirror neuron system growing up. So then you grew up
Hmm.
to be more empathic.
Huh.
You could have you were more connected to your own emotions, and you could then feel into other people's experiences.
Right. Right. So I still have to figure out why I cry so much at This Is Us.
Maybe you have a highly activated mirror neuron system that you're highly empathic, that you feel other people's pain, you feel other people's joy.
Right. So how do you know, like, how do you know when you're empathizing?
Oh gosh, you're
Is that
asking.
is that too tough a question?
I feel it. I don't know.
Okay, no, that's a good answer though. But how, like, I know it's sometimes like I have the same trouble as well. Because like I feel so much in my body, and then I can't translate that into words. So maybe I'm asking you something that's too hard to translate.
Yeah, I know that I'm empathizing when I can feel another person's pain or joy or
Uh
emotion.
huh.
And I have very subtle awareness of my own emotions. Like I can now tell when it's my emotion versus when I'm
Hmm.
feeling into somebody else's.
I guess it's an open question for me because I look at other people who and I watch them and it looks, if they were just filmed, it would look like, oh, they're really showing a lot of empathy, and I don't get the sense that they're empathizing. I think it feels to me like they're not really feeling into the other person, they're
Oh,
just thinking about it.
yes, yes, yes. Like
And other people, it's so clear that they're just pouring out their empathy.
so what comes to mind when you say this is one is sympathizing and one is empathizing.
Hmm.
When I think of sympathizing, sympathy is more of, I think, a
Right. Right.
cognitive event, whereas empathy is really embodied. It's embodied a feeling into the other person.
Right.
Because I think even with empathy, you can have almost not very much even going on up here, and your whole body is just filled with emotion.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer. I like it. I like it. So
Mhm.
your therapy practice is called conscious living therapy, right?
Yes.
How come? What like
Yeah.
like
Well,
each of those words is, like a full, like a chapter in a book for
mhm.
each word.
My biggest value in life is to live consciously, to be awake in
Mhm.
each moment, as many moments as possible in my life. Um, and it
So
was,
can I ask you then, so what is consciousness for you?
yeah, being conscious. It's like living consciously. It's living with awareness, deep awareness of what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, with intentionality, living aligned with my values,
Hmm.
um, being aware of my patterns, being aware of my human, um, my shit. Are we allowed to swear? My shit.
Well, you just did. So
Okay, yeah. Or you'll just keep hearing beep beep. Um, yeah. And it
so
was really my two experiences with acting and leaving the
mhm.
academics that really woke me up to, oh, this is what it's like to live consciously, like not just on autopilot of this is what a successful life is, this is what I'm supposed to do to be a good girl.
Mhm.
Like I want to be true to myself. So
Right. Right.
does that answer your question?
You know what? Well,
You can
I
say
don't
no.
I don't know. So I don't know, because I think, like, this is a podcast about consciousness and creativity, and I think this podcast is going to go on forever and ever because there is no clear answer. You
Yeah,
know, I like, someone in my family did a master's of neuroscience, and they have a biological answer for what is consciousness.
of
Like,
course.
where does it actually reside? Is it in the body, outside the body? Like, where are the limits of it? but what I find interesting is your answer, like what you said, had nothing to do with biology, with constraint in any way.
Well, I think thinking about it a little more, consciousness for me is having deep, deep awareness
Hmm.
of myself and what's like my environment.
So that's the right. And I think that's the question that I, like, over a period of time want to get to, is when you say self, like, what
Uh,
is self? Like, who,
right,
because someone says to me, what are you thinking? And I go, well, I'm thinking about what to have for lunch.
right.
And then they say, well, who's thinking about that? And
Oh
it's like,
gosh.
oh my gosh, it's the self, is myself is thinking about it. And it's like,
Get
well,
so deep and philosophical here. Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
right. And at some point it's like, it's great. I love the biology, I love the neuroscience, the philosophy. But at the end of the day, I just want to go, I'm just conscious of wanting a sandwich right now or something.
Yeah, I almost think of consciousness almost also being in opposition to being on autopilot,
Yeah,
getting up each day, getting out of bed, having coffee, going into shower, getting ready for work, going
right.
like that kind of autopilot, buzzing in the head.
Mhm.
Um, it's almost like if I was to create a continuum, it's like that would be the one end, consciousness would be the other end. I think I'm still trying to figure out consciousness for myself too. I know it's not that.
And is it a trap? Not a trap, but like, once you're awake, once you are awake and you start attuning to others and your mirror neurons fire and you have empathy and you cry at TV shows and all that, like, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle, right?
No, no. In fact, the cave by Plato comes to
Mhm.
mind. You know, the analogy of the cave.
No, I don't.
Oh, you
Is
don't
it?
know the cave? Oh, it's
No, is he like a hip hop artist or
oh,
something?
you don't know Plato.
No, no,
Funny.
I know Plato. I don't know the cave.
It's Plato's called the cave. It's an analogy of ignorance, of human ignorance. Um,
Ah,
and it embodies this exact concept of
mhm.
living kind of like trapped in your own mind. And then the first time you kind of take off the shackles and see the light, you can never not see the light again. It's
Ah,
like awake. There's this
right.
awakening.
Ah, yes. I guess that's what we have to live with,
Uh-huh.
which is like beautiful, but also comes with it, fraught with something else as well, with challenges that,
Talking about waking up, that process.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
and staying awake. Yes.
Oh, yes. I was joking with a colleague the other day that it's just sometimes I wish I wasn't so conscious. Sometimes I wish I wasn't so aware of my shit constantly and like so aware of my patterns and so aware of what I'm doing or what I'm not doing. And oh,
Mhm.
yeah, sometimes I just wish it would just.
Uh-huh. So do you get tired or exhausted, or like, because you're, I mean, you can be doing it 24/7 or during your waking hours, but you as a psychotherapist
Mm,
maybe focused in doing it a lot more than the average Joe.
yes. Yes. I mean, I can get very, very tired. Um, yes.
Sorry, that sounds like it was a downer of a question.
No, no, I just thought there, I'm like, "Okay, where do I wanna go with this?" I'm like, "I don't know, yes, I do get
Yes,
tired.
yes.
Yes, yes.
And hopefully you take care of yourself.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, there are sometimes, sometimes being with clients energizes me.
Mm,
Sometimes, because, I don't know if this is your experience, Modia, because I know you see clients as well,
right.
but, sometimes when I'm with clients, it's like an hour of meditating because there's just such focus and there's so stability in the present moment that at the end of that hour, it's like, I feel actually very clear, very open
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes.
For me, I feel that, like, I feel it when I let go, when I
Mm,
kind of that sort of the Taoist um,
mm,
philosophy of just jumping in the river and
uh-huh.
letting like, going with it
Yes,
with
yes.
some direction, but really just staying in the flow of the river.
Oh,
And that's when I get energized with clients.
that's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to, if we still have time, when you talked before about like feeling into your client,
Mhm.
it made me think of another area of your specialty, which is codependency.
Yeah.
I wonder if we could talk just a little bit about codependency.
Sure. Yeah. So codependency, there's many different definitions, and I can't think of a single definition off the top of my head, so I'll just come up with my own. Uh, Codependency is um, that tendency for you to feel like you cannot live without another person's approval, without their validation, that your worth depends on other people, that your value depends on other people.
Mm.
It typically revolves around being a constant helper, being a constant saver, constant fixer.
Mm.
And if people aren't coming to me for for support or for help, then I feel I'm not worthy. Then I feel I have no purpose and I don't even exist. It usually happens also with romantic relationships. Why there's like there, there's a really almost feel like you will die feeling of like if you actually separate from that person.
Uh-huh. And then
Yeah.
there's the other side, right, of the enabler of the codependency of that person.
Yeah, so codependents are typically attracted to more narcissistic or people with addictions,
Mm.
people with high needs that you will never satisfy. No matter how much you give, they will never be enough. So it's perfect. It's a perfect storm.
Right, right. Perfect. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like a hand in a glove. And
Yes.
how do you work with someone like that?
Yeah. So, well, first in transparency, I have a lot of my own experience of codependency in my own
Mm.
life and a lot of healing and recovery in codependency within myself. So I know it first on a human level. I know the feelings in my body. I know it from a very even like cellular body level, what it's like to go through that kind of um, behavioral addiction or relational addiction, because it is known as that as well.
Mhm.
Um, but when I first talked to a client with codependency, it's really just asking, well, what makes you think you're codependent? What are the different relationships in your life? Um, and so finding out kind of like there's usually that theme of everything that I just said of constantly needing to help, constantly feeling they need to be needed. Basically, the first step is getting them to think of themselves because there is no self in their life.
Mm.
It's like um, it's all about everybody else. So it's actually very common when I ask them, well, what do you feel? Or what do you think? There
Right.
will literally be a confused look. I don't know what you mean. I don't know the question.
Mm.
Well, what are you feeling right now? I don't know. Like it's like the first time in their life somebody's making that telescope shift onto themselves.
Hmm. And asking them whether they have any self-agency. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yes, and getting them to think of themselves for the first time in their life, really,
Right. Right.
right? So we do a lot of work around that building a foundation first, which takes a while of like,
Mhm.
and that's literally always my homework. Ask yourself as many times throughout the day, what do I think right now? What do I feel right now? What do I want right now? Like
Uh-huh.
as even if it feels silly, like by rote, just keep asking yourself, flipping that telescope back on the self.
Mhm.
And then it would be starting to ask for their needs. Like it's all about boundary work too. I do a lot of boundary work.
Uh-huh.
And we do a lot of work around um, understanding where in their life they were taught that they need to take care of others in order to feel safe and loved in their life, and have a lot of compassion for that. So it's not about shame and feeling bad that that's how they are.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's a lot about separating themselves from
Mhm.
the other person. And of course, there's always that thing. Well, I'm going to be selfish if I think of me.
Right.
That's
Right.
huge one, but it's I always reframe it as self-care. And the more you can actually take care of yourself, the more when you do support others, it's coming from a full place, and you're actually getting a lot more of yourself.
Right. So you actually are kind of separating into self-care so you can come back to we care.
Yes, codependency, like the person's self-concept is like this. There's no self. They're embedded and enmeshed in other people.
Mhm.
So the process, in a way, has to create this so you can then be like this.
Right. Right. And this in our term is being interdependent, right?
Interdependent. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like I exist and you exist,
Right.
and I can care for you and you can care for me.
Uh-huh.
And if you can't care for me, I'm okay. And if you don't need me, I'm okay.
Right.
I can't be there for you. You're going to be disappointed, but I know you're going to be okay.
Mhm. Uh-huh. Nice. like if you had a go-to book or something for codependency, do you have one?
Oh God, a few. So codependent no more is kind of the big one. Melanie Beattie. You know, I've actually even thought of maybe writing a book about codependency.
Oh, yay. Okay.
Um,
Just give me like, say, a month's notice on when you're going to publish it so I can free up some time to read it.
Sounds good.
I think it would be great. Go for it.
Yeah, it's something that's been kind of playing in my mind.
Yeah, nice. Hey, Terra, before I let you go, and
Yes.
it's been such a treat spending time with you and hearing about your practice and your, where you've come from and how you've integrated everything along your path. I just want to close with what I'm doing with all my guests, 3 rapid fire questions.
Okay.
So make them as...
I'm nervous and excited.
Okay, me too. So number 1, what is your superpower?
Empathy.
Great. Number 2, what are you reading right now?
Oh, I'm actually in between books. I just finished In an Unspoken Voice by Peter Levine.
Ah,
So,
beautiful book.
sorry.
It's my favorite trauma book.
Oh, it was so good. It was so
Yeah.
validating. It was so good. And I want to read Trauma and Memory actually by Peter Levine
Uh-huh.
next.
Nice. Okay. And number 3 comes from this book. You know these little free libraries? I'll show it to you.
Okay.
You know, little free libraries that people stick in front of their houses? These,
Oh, like those little
like,
boxes.
yeah, mini houses, and you open them and people put books to take and give. And so I picked up this book not so long ago, and it's just a book of questions.
Oh,
And
cool.
so the third and final question is,
This is great.
you just tell me when to stop.
Stop. This is like tarot cards.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. This question says, do you know that you know far more than you know you know? Shall I say it again? Shall I ask it again?
Yes.
Do you know that you know far more than you know you know?
I want to say yes.
Okay, then that's perfect. Then say it.
Yes.
Okay, terrific.
Mhm.
So we're coming towards the end. I definitely want to have people know how they can follow up with you, get in touch with you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've got a website, which is my name. It's www.terrakowalyk.com. It's TerraKowalyk.com.
Okay,
So yeah, go to my website or you can email me consciousliving@terrakowalyk.com.
terrific. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, this has been so nice, Modia. Oh,
Yeah, thank you,
thank you so
Terra.
much for
Thank
asking me.
you. Thank you.
Mhm.
And you're welcome to come back and hang out with the audience again anytime you want.
I would love that.
All right. Okay, so we'll sign off for now.
Sounds good.
And thank you again.
Oh, my pleasure.
Take care.